Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Don Teo Natural Processed Nicaragua from Sweet Bloom Coffee Roasters. And there's the bag right there. And Sweet Bloom based out of Lakewood, Colorado, and before we start discussing this coffee, let me get two important footnotes out of the way. First things first, again, apologies for any sort of construction noise, as the construction is the loudest it's been since we started recording these videos at this place. So we pointed the microphone away from the noise in the hopes of minimizing how much background we get, but there might still be some noise. Second thing, and probably the more important thing, is this week's going to be dedicated entirely to these Don Teo coffees. So Monday we have this natural processed, Wednesday we're going to be releasing the honey processed, and Friday we're adding a special video. As we usually don't release videos on Friday, we're going to be releasing the wash process because these Don Teo coffees have done something really nice for us. They've given us the opportunity to get ahead in our videos. So as a lot of people know, it takes usually 2 to 3 weeks to record one of these videos, but since these were smaller bag coffees, we're able to get through these videos a lot quicker, and it allows us to work on a project that we've been wanting to work on for quite a while. And that project is going to include a lot of coffee roasters that we have not featured on this channel yet, including another blind taste test rankings video, which have been very popular in recent weeks. So look forward to all of those, even if it means, well, you get a bonus extra video as well as a lot of Sweet Bloom content. And we love Sweet Bloom, so it just works out pretty well for us, and we feel like it works out pretty well for you guys as well. But this coffee right here, it was featured in our recent blind taste test rankings video, which had 4 Sweet Bloom coffees, and it finished last place on that day, 4th out of 4. And the reason for that being, it was definitely the least favorite of our coffees in the sense of flavor profile. Very chocolate forward, it even had a little bit of booziness, and we've been complaining about those coffees throughout the year, so it definitely finished last. It was always going to finish last, but we were curious to see if it might get better, as Sweet Bloom coffees definitely get better over time. This right here is day 15 of this coffee. The recipe we have for Sweet Bloom is a 16.67 to 1 water to coffee ratio. That's 204 degrees Fahrenheit, brewed through the Chemex. They're a light medium American for the roast profile. And let's start discussing the coffee itself. So day 6, as noted, definitely not the best first impression. It was the blind taste test rankings video, and it tasted a little bit like a kind of boozy cherry, and we've been complaining nonstop about the boozy cherry this year, as it's become very common in a lot of natural and anaerobic coffees. Getting some other deep flavors, deep dark cherry most specifically, and just never going to leave the best first impression. Probably the worst first impression we've had for a Sweet Bloom coffee this entire year, maybe the Juan Pena. Those are 2 coffees that we didn't necessarily love right off the bat. Day 8, better, a little bit better, as a lot of the boozy component had dissipated ever so slightly. Cherry more like a dark chocolate cherry, so it was like, I think they have listed on here cherry cordial. I know they have listed on here cherry cordial, and you could definitely see that, kind of the darker chocolate to go with that cherry cordial, and cherry cordials tend to be a little bit more bitter. There was a coffee we had earlier this year that very much tasted like a cherry cordial. I believe it was the Mod Cup coffee, but this one right here, it doesn't have necessarily that same sort of booziness that that one had, and as a result, again, more heavy dark chocolate in its place of the cherry cordial kind of winey component that we were getting. Day 13, so let the coffee rest for 5 more days, and we had seen significant improvement, and this was a much better cup at this point. Pretty strong cup still, but it wasn't overbearing. So a lot of these boozy cherry chocolate coffees have been way overbearing. This one right here had a lot, almost the entirety of the boozy component die down. Would even note on this point that I wasn't experiencing any notable boozy component, and had a lot of dark fruits and dark chocolate. Still never going to be my cup. Don't necessarily like chocolate as a whole, so like dark chocolate even less. And the darker fruits aren't necessarily my favorite, so I think the darker stone fruits. Don't necessarily love plums. They have fig jam listed on here. Don't know what figs taste like. I'm not too familiar with figs, so wouldn't be able to tell you if that note was accurate. Day 14, final day when we made the tasting wheel. Coffee is deep, rich, and robust, predominantly a dark chocolate with some pretty distinct cherry candy. That was the best part of this coffee. Was we've complained about the cherry in so many coffees this year, but this was a little bit more like a kind of hard cherry candy, which was really nice, and we felt that it was the best part of this cup, and it wasn't as overbearing, over the top, and kind of distinctly negative as a lot of the cherry we've experienced this year. As it cools down to room temperature, it remains very sweet, and that's when we were getting a lot more of those darker fruits. So you can tell they have a really nice, sweet, dark fruit component to it, which is another pleasant part of this. And we would even describe the chocolate in this as kind of a dark chocolate cake to it. And again, that's not something we necessarily love, so yeah, the flavor profile is definitely not ours. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. And first thing we must note is that the sweetness is still at a level 4, so we would probably put this at a Actually, you know what? Drinking this right now, it's definitely a level 4. We had thought for a second that it might be a 3.5, and it's kind of on the less sweet side of Sweet Bloom coffees, but even then, it's still pretty sweet. The level 4 is definitely justified. Berry fruit, level 4, because the cherry is very pronounced. Chocolate, level 4, probably maybe even a 4.5. The dark chocolate is very strong, and that's why the bitterness is so high at a level 3, as well as the smokiness, because the dark chocolate is very pronounced in this cup. Let's see, anything else worth really noting? The body at a higher level, level 3, that's usually about as high as we ever put a body for a coffee brewed through the Chemex. Cleanliness, pretty low, but honestly, it's not too terrible for it being a natural. We could probably put it at a 2.5. The acidity is at a level 2, and that's probably something that we really love about Sweet Bloom coffees. We've probably noticed this with so many of the tasting wheels we've made from them. Sweetness high, acidity low, and that's why we're huge fans of Sweet Bloom's coffees in general. Florals, level 2. You got quite a bit of some other things here, but nothing I feel like is necessarily worth discussing other than what we've already discussed. All right, overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. This was our least favorite of the coffee from that blind taste test video. It is still definitely our least favorite of these coffees, but that's entirely because it just definitely isn't our flavor profile. And truth be told, it makes me a little happy to kind of talk a little less excitedly about Sweet Bloom's coffees, because I feel like sometimes it might come out as us being biased towards Sweet Bloom coffees. But that being said, we know there are some Sweet Bloom coffees we don't or won't enjoy, and that's why we don't purchase them. But given that we were able to get to try this coffee as part of the box set, and we knew we weren't necessarily going to be the biggest fan, it just kind of does go to show that Sweet Bloom will produce coffees from time to time that we're not the biggest fans of. And this coffee right here is a perfect example of that. That being said, it's still actually kind of impressed. Given how negative of a first impression we had of this coffee and the way it developed so nicely by the end, this was a very drinkable coffee for us. So many of those coffees that we didn't necessarily enjoy, we had to start putting through the automatic coffee maker, and we had to just kind of stomach the fact that we weren't even going to like it in the slightest. But this one's drinkable in the sense that, honestly, could drink a couple more of these cups of coffee and wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that notion. Type of person we would suggest this coffee to is somebody that definitely likes their dark chocolate very pronounced, very strong, but again, a kind of a more sweet dark chocolate, as we were expecting it to be a very high percentage cacao, but at the same time it had a lot of sweetness to it, which was really pleasant. Cherry component as well, those things are a must because this coffee has that in abundance. Again, that kind of more medium American profile, as this coffee, we oftentimes feel like Sweet Bloom does a great job of encapsulating that profile, as well as almost any coffee roaster in the entire world. But I think we're going to leave it at that. If you have by chance tried the natural process Dante, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a review of the Danteo Natural Processed Nicaragua from Sweet Bloom Coffee Roasters. Thank you for watching.